Hey everyone, it's Keely here for Soy and Shea, and thank you so much for joining me for today's soap making video where I'm going to make a Mother's Day soap that was inspired by the contents of the Pimp My soap creativity box for March. That box is still available on the website and is there until sold out. And what was included in the March box, we've got 4 packs of soap dough, including a pack of milk, we've got some Monstera, we've got some Sky Blue, and we've got some lemon. There is also a pot of our gorgeous Silver Hollow Bio Sparkle, which is stunning on the soaps. And to help spread that across the top of the soap, we've also included one of the Bio Sparkle brushes. And then so that we can create some gorgeous embellishments for the soap, there is this daisy silicone mold. There's also a discount code in there as well for future silicone molds that are coming up on the website as well. But today we're going to go and make some embellishments using this little mold, and we're going to create fresh as a daisy soap. Let's go. Alright, so we're going to start by working with the lemon and the milk. We'll pop our sparkle to one side for when we do the soap, and we've got our little mold here, and it's so easy to build up colours in these molds and get a more realistic looking embellishment. So I'm just going to open up our lemon one here, and all I really need for now, we're going to make some little yellow centres on these daisies. I'm just going to take a very small amount, roll it into just a little ball, and then in the middle of our little flowers we've got that little center hole. I'm just going to drop my piece in there. So I'm going to fill all of these 4 bigger flowers. The little ones are a bit too hard to do this technique with, but these little ones, or these bigger ones, are perfect. So pop them in there. You want the ball to be smaller than the actual hole that you're dropping it into. If it's much bigger, that's when you start ending up with a bleed of color into your next layer. So I'm going to pop that one in there. I do have a couple of these other slightly smaller flowers where I'll be able to just drop a little yellow center into it. Now that I've got my yellow center, we're going to grab some of this milk soap dough. Going to condition it up just a little bit to get it nice and soft and pliable there. And now that I have got that going, I'm just going to break off a slightly bigger piece. I do like to roll it out in a ball first. Probably need a bit bigger than that. And then pop it on the top of the flower that we want to fill, and then I squish it down into the gap there. And I'm just going to fill all of these ones up exactly the same way. Again, need a bit more than that piece. And then I'm just going to take my scraper tool and I'm just going to very gently scrape across the back, being careful not to pull the soap dough out of the mold, but I'm just flattening the back of these off. And then just with what I've managed to pull off there, I'm just going to fill in some of these other smaller daisies. Again, just going to use my scraper tool just to tidy up the backs of all of these, and then we can start pulling them out of the mold. And to get them out of the mold, I'm just going to very gently start pulling my mold apart until I can see that the flowers are starting to release, and then as they do, we can just push them up and out of the mold. And then if we need to, we can just tidy them up, getting the bits of extra soap off them. But I do like to use that scraper to make sure that they do come out nice and clean. So there is our first little daisy. Let's grab another one of these out. If you do ever have trouble with your soap dough not coming out of the molds, you can always give them a really light dusting with a little bit of cornstarch in them, and that will help to release them. However, I do find when you do that, you do get that little powdery look on the top of soap dough pieces. There is another one. Then we'll grab our final big one out. And there is that one as well. Now I'm going to also grab some of these smaller ones out. Again, what I'm doing is I'm bending the molds so that they start to really push out. It doesn't hurt the mold. These ones, I wasn't able to get the little yellow centers, but they're still really cute. We can probably use a little bit of diluted mica in some rubbing alcohol to paint the center of these little flowers. And we've also got these really tiny little ones. I've got soap dough all over my fingers. The white that I'm actually using was a bad batch that I made. I don't know what I actually did to it, but I just didn't feel that it was the best quality for selling, so I kept it for myself, but it is a little bit stickier than what my normal soap dough recipe is. There is another little round one there. I think one of these I did put a yellow center. This one I've put the little yellow center in this one. So now that we've got the first lot out, I'm going to make myself a whole load more flowers to go on the top of this soap. But as I said before, if you are having trouble getting your soap dough to release out of these molds, maybe it's a really humid day and the soap dough is a little bit stickier than what it normally is, all you need to do is get a little bit of cornstarch and a paintbrush and just pick up a little bit of the powder. You don't want too much, because if you've got a lot in there, it's really going to affect the look of your soap dough pieces. Once you've got a bit of powder on there, come along and just dip it into these holes. Just dries out a little bit, give it a tap down to get rid of any loose powder, and then your little pieces of soap dough will come out so much easier. So if I squish that piece in, bend it back, it just lifts straight up and out. You do have to be careful when you're using some darker colors, because it can leave a powdery look, but once you've got it on the soap, if you give it a bit of a steam, that powder will come off. The blue was included in this kit, so maybe you could do with the tiny ones some little blue forget-me-not filler flowers as well for any project that you're working on. What I'm going to get doing now is making the rest of my little daisies to go onto this soap, and then we will get on to making Fresh as a Daisy. So I decided that I wanted to add a little bit more colour into this one, because my soap was going to be predominantly white, and I didn't think the little flowers that I was doing in white would actually show up. So I have done a whole heap of little ones using some of that lemon, and then I also went and grabbed some sunshine yellow as well, and I'm just finishing pulling the last of these out of my mould. That one's a little bit sticky. And then we have got all of our little flowers all ready to go. So let's go and make the soap. Okay, so let's get on to making this soap. I have decided to do this in some layers, and I'm going to be using something I have not used in a long time, mainly because when I had my last molds, they were the wrong size. But now that I have got my new soap molds, I can once again use my soap scrapers, which I've had from Off Wickedly Goods. I'm going to use this zigzag one, and we're going to create a green layer base to kind of make it look a bit like grass, and then we're going to do a nice swirly top before popping all those daisies on the top of this one. So I'm going to get started with that. The bottom is just going to be green, so I've popped my mica in straight away, so we'll get that mixed in. We'll pop our lye in as well, and I am using clean cotton today for this fragrance, because I absolutely love this fragrance. It always sells quickly whenever I put it on my shelf, and I just thought it would go perfectly with these little daisies. So let's get this mixed up into the mold, and then we'll start by scraping that first layer. Okay, so this has been sitting and firming up, and I've just put my tool in right at the very end. I'm using the little clips so that I know exactly where to hold it and keep it nice and level. And what I'm now going to do is just very gently pull this towards me. It's going to start picking up some of that soap, and I do actually have a piping bag just off to my side here because I'm going to save some of this and hopefully use it to pipe my leaves when we get to the top. I'm just going to keep pulling along. Once I start getting a bit of this built up here, I'm going to grab my little piping cup. Just going to start pulling some of this out of the way and into my cup here, and then keep going. Now I'm at the end here. What I'm going to do is just kind of bring it and scrape it up the side of my mold, bringing all that excess soap up and into my cup. I'm just going to go over it just a little bit more because I have got a little bit down here that is hasn't been scraped. So making sure it goes back in exactly the same way and just coming back down. And it's just going to pick up the last of that soap that I missed and give it a little bit more definition there. Just turn the mold around because what I'm going to do is just use my spatula here just to clean up the sides and the end because I don't want any of this on the sides of my soap. If you find that the spatula is too big, I often find using a chopstick and running it along the edge there is enough to pick that excess up. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with that. Let's move on to doing the next part. So that this hopefully stays the right consistency for piping, I am just going to close that bag up so no more air can get into there, and we'll just leave that to one side until we're ready for it. Now I've got the rest of my oil and lye water here. Now when I calculated how much oil I was going to need, I did end up adding about another 150 grams worth of oil in here, which I actually think, considering I didn't scrape that much off, I think we're going to have a lot left over. So I do have a couple of little kids molds here to pour any excess into. Now for the top I am going to be using, let me grab it here, a white base, and then I have got two different shades of yellow. I have got some Wellington and some Tuscan Sun, and we're going to try and get some curly whirlies happening in the top layer of this soap, and then we will be popping all of our little daisy embeds on the top. So let's get some music going and get this soap into the mold. I am so happy with how that went. Last time I used clean cotton, it was kind of at that point where some of the fragrance oils had changed and it moved on me so quick I couldn't get my usual swirls in it. But this time around I got just enough time to actually work with it before it all set up on me, so I'm really pleased. We should get some really nice pretty swirls in this one. What I'm going to do, I wasn't going to do it evenly, but I think I will end up just doing three big daisies on each of the soaps. And I've got it so I should be able to use alternate colors. So I've got some light centers and some dark centers on here, and then I'll go through and I'll just probably scatter in a few of these little flowers here and there in between. And then we've got our green piping here. It's still nice and soft, thank goodness. And we might then just add in, well, yes, it's going to go, just a few little leaves here and there just to fill in all the gaps. And then we'll put some Bio Sparkle on it at the end. That is looking so super sweet and delicate. I'm really loving the colors. I am just going to add a little bit of this. So I'm going to take my little Bio Sparkle brush, just dip it in, and then just give it a bit of a gentle tap just to try and get the glitter just to fall nicely rather than in big clumps. And then once I've got that all done, I will bring you down for a closer look. So here is the close-up of Fresh as a Daisy. It is looking beautiful and smells absolutely gorgeous. It's well worth working with that clean cotton, even though it has changed and it misbehaves slightly, but it does smell and look really good, so I'm pretty happy with it. Gonna leave it sit here overnight, and we'll be back in a moment. We'll have a look at that sculpted layer and we'll see if we got any swirls and curls in this one. We're back the next day to cut into Fresh as a Daisy, and it is looking even more beautiful. Those tiny little daisies have all just really popped in here. So let's get this one lined up on the cutter and see what patterns we've got on the inside here. Still a little bit sticky. I've come into the shop early on a Sunday so that I can cut this one. Got it all lined up just before I cut it. These were the little bees that I made with the leftover from having extra oil in here to make up for the scraping. Absolutely love them. Whenever I do get these leftover bits of soap, I make up these little molds, and the kids love this sort of size soap. Let's cut through. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. We might have a few little casualties of leaves. All the flowers are intact though. Alright, so let's take a look on the inside. Oh, not a swirl on this one. It looks a bit like a butterfly in there. Hopefully as we get further down we will have some swirls. But I love how the bottom of this has come up. I haven't done sculpted layers for so long. But that one has come up really well. I like doing sculpted layers, but I hate the fact that they are just so messy when you do them. And oh look, we've got some curly whirlies starting to happen in this one. But yeah, I hate when you do the sculpted layers, you end up making so much mess, and there's not a lot of waste, because as you saw, we used the sort of waste of the sculpting to do the leaves on the top here. And I do also have an extra mold over here with some more of the leftover that wasn't enough to put in the big one, and so these will go out as little samples to people. But I've just not done it for so long because I could never be bothered with cleaning up the mess that goes with sculpted layers. But I'm so pleased that I've done it, because this one was really easy, wasn't particularly messy, wasn't particularly wasteful either. So really liking how this one has come together, and I've got those sort of swirls that I was after. It's really delicate and really light, so I can think it's coming up on the camera, and my screen is just always too small for me to really see, but it's come up exactly how I wanted it to, being nice and light and really sort of breezy sort of pattern in there. And oh, I suppose I should show you the top as well. So we've got our 3 little daisies and then the couple of little minis that go in there as well. So I hope you've enjoyed coming along with me as I made my Fresh as a Daisy soap. This one is heading off to the cure rack for the next 4 weeks, and it'll be available just in time for Mother's Day. So I hope you've enjoyed coming along, and until the next time, I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you then. Bye.